Right, guys, we're going to go through all the flashbacks, so you're not going to hear me speaking at all for all this. We're going to catch up, because I need to catch up. I haven't looked at these flashbacks myself, so let's get started.
I still remember seeing the ad for the Regal Apartments in the paper. It's easy for people to look at it and see a dingy, run-down shithole. But me? I saw a place with history and character. I saw a place full of artistic inspiration. Before I knew it, I was the official tenant of apartment 3A. Looking back on it, I wish I had never even unpacked. My new apartment turned out to have more character than I had anticipated. The carpets were occasionally soggy, the pipes were rusty, and I could hear the tenant below me banging against the walls and screaming at the top of his lungs. Sure, there were other problems with the place, but they just added to its charm. They were things I could live with. What I couldn't live with was showering in brown water, mysterious leaks molding the carpet, and obnoxious neighbors. I called the plumber, who arrived just as I was about to have a word with the people downstairs. When I showed him the wet spots on the carpet, he scratched his head and explained that nothing was leaking, and that the reason for the wet spots was most likely due to me spilling something and not realizing it. Did this guy take me for an idiot? I never spilled a thing. He apologized and said that without a leak, there's nothing he could do, so he moved on to the shower. Thankfully, the water had no trouble turning brown. He thought it could be an issue with a rusty boiler and went to check it out. I took the opportunity to address the tenants below. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. In fact, I couldn't hear anything at all. I tried the door, expecting it to be locked, but it just swung open. I was shocked to find it completely empty. That's when wet footprints began to appear on the floor. They were headed right for me. Just then I could hear the plumber scream from the boiler room downstairs. By the time I ran down there, he was long gone, but he had discovered the source of the brown water. Packed into the old, rusty boiler was a bloated, decomposing corpse. The police are still investigating the homicide, and the landlord has promised to renovate the boiler room. However, despite his efforts, 3A is back on the market, and I doubt I'll ever feel clean again.
Right, that is one. Just make sure, hang on. There's no flashbacks to these there. No, okay. Right, next one.
Well, it was somewhere around noon on a Sunday when I got a call from the pastor. He was looking for someone to fix up the old church. It had been sitting up on that hill, abandoned for over 40 years. After getting hit by lightning back in '98, it suffered a bunch of fire damage. So, of course, I agreed to help. I knew something was wrong the second I stepped inside. As an inexplicable chill came over me. Anyway, I shook it off and I set to work. As I started tearing up the damaged floorboards, they were all bad. Well, I uncovered an old rat's nest. It seemed like any of the others I'd seen over my 22 years in the construction business, until I saw the scraps of human hair and bones that the rats had used to make it. Well, suddenly I heard the floorboards on the second floor creaking above me, and the sounds of a young girl weeping. Well, I was worried that the damaged section of the ceiling was going to give way under her weight, so, I yelled, "Hey, stop, come down immediately." Well, my voice must have startled her because she went completely silent. So I got up and I went to look for her. When I entered the room upstairs, though, I was surprised to see it completely empty. It only took me, a minute to make my way up there, and I would have heard her run off if she did. But that's when I heard the weeping again. Only this time it was coming from the bell tower. So I climbed up the long, treacherous, curving stairs at the top, and I noticed what I thought was dried blood dotting the way. When I finally got up to the belfry, I was just paralyzed with terror. Because lying before me was the withered corpse of a young girl. Judging by her sun-bleached clothes and weathered bones, it seemed like she'd been lying there for the better part of those 40 years the place had been empty. The rats, I mean, they picked her bones clean. I took off running. I didn't stop until I got all the way to town. The ravages of time made it impossible for the authorities to get any identity on this girl. It seems Salem will never know who killed her. Some people still claim to hear her weeping there. As for myself, I never went back.
But they're weeping. Did I see her? Did I see her? Did I see the ghost? No, I can't remember seeing the ghost. That was in the church, and I didn't hear any weeping. Didn't see the ghost either. Alright.
I can still remember my first day on the force. Salem PD was in this tiny building on the edge of town. It was old, crowded, and completely insufficient to handle the day-to-day operation. Protecting Salem was getting harder and harder. Finally, the city decided to convert the old armory into our new headquarters. And when we finally moved in, I couldn't believe how big and modern the place was. Not bad for one of the first buildings in Salem. Plus, it just felt right. It used to be the city's first line of defense in a wild frontier, and now it had resumed its post once again, only this time in a modern world. The first week was a little chaotic as we settled in. One officer reported that someone had removed his gun from his locker. It took him 20 minutes to track it down, and when he did, he found it leaning against the wall in one of the unoccupied offices. Also, the late-night station operator reported a strange phone malfunction. Occasionally, when someone would call in to report a shooting, the recording would just stop. The call would cut out, and the voice of the panicked caller would just loop over and over again until the phone was unplugged. Soon it was pretty clear that these strange occurrences weren't just honest mistakes or faulty phone lines. One evening, the medical examiner came running down the hall in tears. She noticed that her scalpels and other tools had gone missing. She went to get more from the cabinet, but stopped cold at what she saw in the reflection. A ghostly silhouette of a Civil War soldier was standing over one of the corpses. She spun around. It was gone. She barely noticed how cold the room had gotten before running off. Of course, the guys didn't believe her. Hell, I didn't either. Till I saw it with my own eyes. I was working late and got up to get more coffee. As I rounded the corner, I saw it in the reflection of the trophy case. It was staring right at me. He lifted an old, ghostly rifle and pulled the trigger. The trophy case fractured into a spider web of cracked glass, and I took off running. The captain didn't believe me and docked my next paycheck to replace the glass. I didn't care if people thought I was crazy. I know what I saw. People sometimes ask me if anyone else has seen it since, or if the specter still roams the halls. I always tell them the same thing. I wouldn't know. I transferred to Boston.
Oh, wow. We've seen that one? No, that's the one. We've seen this one. But, so that's the Spectre, okay. Let's get this one done.
I've always been a kleptomaniac. It's not that I was lazy or anything, I was just bored. Stolen goods were always more interesting to me. I could just look at whatever it was and relive the exciting memory of the theft itself. Sometimes I was worried that I'd get caught. Other times I was riding an adrenaline rush. But it wasn't until the last thing I ever stole that I truly felt afraid. I remember it like it was yesterday, despite the years I've been trying to forget it. My friends and I snuck into a graveyard to drink a few beers like we normally did on a boring weeknight. We headed for our usual spot, an old run-down mausoleum. Only this time it was locked. It seemed someone had finally taken an interest in the dead guy it belonged to and didn't appreciate us partying there. So we split up and went looking for a new place. Finally, I found another mausoleum, and one of its walls had begun to crumble away, but I squeezed through. The inside looked the same as all the others, except for one thing. Lying there on top of the central tomb was a dusty frame that contained a wreath made of elaborately braided rope. Knowing that antiques were valuable, I took it. I figured I'd wait a week before selling it in case anyone reported it stolen. So when I got home, I hid it at the top of my closet and went to sleep. That night, I had horrible nightmares of a dead-faced hag with rotting flesh. No matter how many times I woke up, she always found her way back into my dreams. Over the next few days, the nightmares got worse. I'd wake up only to find clumps of my hair missing and my scalp bleeding. I chalked it up to stress and feelings of guilt about stealing from the graveyard. So the next day I went to a pawn shop to sell the wreath and be done with it. I could feel a shiver run down my spine when the pawnbroker informed me that the wreath wasn't made from rope at all. It was actually made from the human hair of a deceased loved one, as was customary in the late 1800s. I wanted the nightmares to stop, so I sold it to him. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. Now, I spend my time trying to track it down, hoping to return it so I can finally get some sleep.
Oh my god, that is dark. Shit. We done that one, right? That will be like up to date, that one will, so we've already watched that one. So we watched this one. I know it's at the bottom, so this must be a good one. This has got to be a good one. This is because it's at the bottom. Every time I get it, it's always coming at the bottom of it. So this is going to be a good one.
I've all seen them by the side of the road. These unkept, smudged, hopeless people holding cardboard signs. Sometimes they have props. Baby stroller, a pet, gasoline can. Something to lend credence to the thin fiction that they need money for something other than booze. It was a man with a need gas sign with the red gas can on the ground that I saw when I drove into Salem 6 unlucky years ago today. Tried to ignore him, not making eye contact, but I was stuck at a red light and pretending he wasn't there was getting really awkward. So I reached into my pocket and pulled out $2, rolling down my window just a crack. Here you go, buddy. I pushed the money through the opening of the window. That was when, for the first time, I really looked at his face, or what was left of his face. It was a single eyeball just looking back at me, bulging out of a charred skull. I absolutely frozen in terror until the blackened shape of uncovered finger bones reached out to take the money. And that's when I let it fall to the ground and slammed on the accelerator. I didn't even care that the light was red. In the time since then, I've picked up pieces of the legend. A shell-shocked war veteran, unemployable and alcoholic, became a familiar sight in Salem, begging by the roadside. Citizens stopped giving him money, thinking he would just move on to a bigger city. He responded by creating one of the most traumatic spectacles in town history, setting himself alight in the middle of town during evening rush hour. Ever since that roadside encounter, I've been seeing little wisps of flame out of the corner of my eye, like brief flashes that are gone as soon as I turn my head, sending nauseated chills through my whole body. Is this tormented spirit following me now? Whether he intends it as a blessing or a curse, I just want to be as far as possible from this horrifying specter.
Huh. Well, that was interesting. I haven't got any more like these flashbacks now, have I? No. Just check now, just in case. Now we all know the book ones, we watched that. But that's... No, we know that, No flashbacks on these. I got like loads of these. Like, you know, there's no point in me. Like, we've done all them. Right, yeah. Right, can't do that. That's a spoiler. Right, so I'll be posting this after. Well, one of the episodes will be coming out because this one's like gonna be a bit later. This is gonna be coming out like. Whatever episode you've watched, will be after it. So it's gonna because this one's like really advanced, so I'm not gonna reveal anything. So I hope you enjoyed. This is gonna be just like a flashback sort of lore thing. We didn't do the straight jacket because you'll watch that on like an episode a little bit upcoming. So we'll keep up to date with these from now on. So this is Big Good John B. Leave a like in the description. And subscribe, and to be continued.